All right, welcome to NST Things, episode number 7. This is in the, well, who the hell knows at this point? Middle, beginning, end, COVID 2020. What the shit happened? So, I've been waiting a little while to do this podcast. I've actually been enjoying quite a bit of time with my family. I will say that I know many people have experienced this slowdown, this virus, what's occurring around us in very different ways. And for myself, I feel like I've, in a sense, prepared for bad days like this for quite some time. And I may kind of dabble in some of the things that I've done to kind of prepare myself for rainy days a little bit throughout the podcast. My mind is honestly in so many different places right now with everything that's going on, and coming out of roughly a 4 to 5 week period where we closed the office down, trying to make sense of that, but also trying to get whatever kind of essence you needed out of that time as well, and juggling being a business owner, which is some real shit. So I'm going to dive into a little bit of that. I may just skip around. I may just ramble. I don't know. This is a different time. And like I said, this has kind of been a podcast that I've wanted to do for a while, and I wasn't sure exactly what I'd talk about, and I was trying to create a little bit of structure, and I have some minor notes, but really to hell with the whole plan. I know for myself, I should say for my office. I have an office in Sarasota, Florida, and we closed down shortly after they issued a secondary clause, you could say, to an emergency order, stating that elective procedures cease. At the time, I was very resistant to this. I am not a fan of anyone showing up and without legal reason telling me that I can't conduct business. As a business owner and a citizen, I recognize that if there is something terrible happening, we should all kind of do our part. So I made a decision that week, and part of it was based on, the information that was starting to come in, how things were changing, which it changed every day. And also I looked at it as from a point of view of liability. So being a therapist, I interact with a lot of different people. I hear a lot of life stories, and I've heard some terrible ones lately in the past couple years, which when I see things reoccurring, whether it be a certain pain pattern or a patient or personality type showing up, I've kind of started to hone in on that a little bit more. And I was just realizing that there were a lot of unfortunate things happening to like good people, like genuinely good people. And they just, they were doing something silly, and, somehow they became liable for a situation that if maybe handled differently, they wouldn't have been. So my biggest concern was, and as any business owner should have been concerned, to have an individual that was ill come through your practice, come through your store, that person then potentially, go get tested, be sick, ill, need treatment, and to find out that was, they had come through your practice or your facility, your store, etc. I know that's why a lot of small businesses closed down, and why they were kind of so eager to in the beginning. That's not great if in the beginning of a pandemic you were helping kind of, create a pocket where this thing could maybe continue to flourish. So we closed the office down, and a lot of people understood. We already started having cancellations. Myself, I have a lot of very committed patients, and I know a lot of people were very hesitant to cancel. A lot of them would cancel very last minute, And if that was the case, we waive fees and things like that because it was kind of a unique situation. So we were just kind of playing along until we actually had to shut it down. Now, taking the break, I will say for me personally, I don't know if I could have ever taken off a 4-day period or even a 10-day period or a 2-week period where I could have been able to genuinely reset my nervous system, because typically if I, take a vacation, the wife is helping plan things, but I feel like I'm a little more in depth with kind of coordinating things, especially if it was kind of my idea. This is kind of where we're going. This is kind of what I was thinking. So just seeing how everything was kind of unfolding, it was like, okay, kind of what can we get out of this? And I know a lot of folks were just like, oh, this should be a time you're crushing it and writing that book you want to write and all that good stuff. And hey, if that's what you should be doing right now, then that's what you should be doing. But if that didn't feel right in some way, that probably wasn't for you. And for myself, I've been hammering my ass off for at least 8 years, trying to build a practice, trying to build something solid, that I feel like there's a bit of a safety net, not something that's fly by night. And we've built a good reputation. We have a good name for ourselves. I have a good name for myself as a therapist. So this has been, worked for. So the last thing I wanted to do was, have it slip away because of liability issues. Somebody coming into the office that was sick. But at the same time, I wanted to get the most out of the time, the downtime. And for me, that ended up being spending time with my family. Spending time with my my now 2-year-old, my wife. We just got married in February. And it was just such a good time to reset. And it couldn't have been rushed. I always have this saying that, you can't force the body to change. You have to invite the body to change. Go ahead and force the body to change and see how it reacts for you next time. You're going to get a lot of feedback, a lot of pushback. The body doesn't like being told what to do. So I was just trying to get myself into, a place where I was really kind of appreciating what I was going through and understanding the significance of, being home and being around your child and not feeling like you have to hustle, which is a huge part of what it is to be. I don't like to use the entrepreneur term. I'm a provider. So in whichever ways that I've cultivated to provide for my family, that's ultimately what I am. I'm not going to go out and take a lot of big risks. I'm looking to take care of, myself, my family, whether you're an employee, you're a family member, you're my child. I'm looking to help those around me. I'm looking to help, my community. I'm not looking to go leverage $100,000 on this new thing because it might be the hottest new deal, whatever. Not my cup of tea. So as we kind of, got further and further into the quarantine, at first I enjoyed it, but then there's also the concern of being a business owner and, okay, what's kind of on the line. And early on, I kind of made the decision before I even told my employees that I would just put them on a salary. And I had talked to a couple people. I knew kind of what was unfolding. A lot of folks were going straight to unemployment. I didn't feel comfortable with that. Again, I feel like, the folks that are around me, they're family. I try to take care of family. And in this situation, that was what I felt was the right thing for me to do. Now, later on down the road, would, an accountant look at that situation and say, hey, this was the right decision? Maybe not. And as a business owner, you kind of learn lessons, but you also learn kind of where your integrity stands as a person, what you're willing to do and what you're willing, not willing to do for others. So I just kind of, made that decision early on. I explained everything to the staff. I didn't really expect anything. I didn't expect, this, that, or the other. You don't have to go out and, stand on the street corner and scream our name. Literally just go home, be with your family. I had fully anticipated this would be something that would pass. It has now been dragging on for quite some time, and I understand some of the concerns why. But as a business owner, things have to get going again. And as now going through it and hopefully being towards the back end of it, I'm glad I've witnessed something like this in my lifetime, because there's a lot of education that comes out of something like this. And at the end of the day, as a business owner, I knew that, after about a month, I knew things weren't looking good. People make promises. Governments make promises. I do believe people genuinely mean good, but being a business owner, having a corporation, understanding corporate loopholes and trickery and things like that they can use, and it's not that it's illegal. It's completely within their bounds, but it's just that people don't understand. And as a 30-year-old business owner, have been a business owner, I want to say since I was at least 23. As clever as you think you are, and as much as you think you know, there's always somebody out there that knows more. And what I witnessed was basically stripped away any sense that was left of somebody's going to be willing to take care of you. So I had kind of bought into this idea that, the government has the interest of small businesses, true small businesses, in mind to keep America sustained. I mean, like when I noticed things slow down, it was everyone I know that has their own little small business and they maybe have less than 5 employees. When everything was coming to a complete halt, that's kind of shocking because those are the worker bees. Those are the folks that are out and about all the time. And to see all of that just slowly come to a halt, I can almost feel the agitation kind of building. People don't do well when they're kind of suppressed that long. Like I said, even for myself, it was, a great time. I got to, hang with my family and reflect and do all this sort of stuff and realize kind of, where my priorities were and what I wanted, in the future. But at the same time, there was still this, almost an urgency to want to go back to what you were doing. And part of it is, we're kind of programmed in our day to day, but there's also, especially in our field, there's a need that has to be filled or needs to be filled because people are genuinely unhappy. And especially during this time, mental health is barely being talked about. Folks don't do well at home by themselves. Sometimes the social interaction they get at work is sometimes the only healthy social interaction that they get. And even if they get ridiculed and, bullied at work, it's weird. Like that can be enough to get them by. So to have somebody just stuck at home and not be able to do anything, it really strips away at you. So even having family around, I could feel, this sense of I needed to provide for my family. I felt like I was, at a certain point just kind of lounging around like a fat cat. As a man, especially when we're kind of, even as young boys, programmed to, score points and win and, succeed, achieve, and eventually provide. We don't do well just not doing anything. And I noticed that a lot of other people that I knew were either deeming themselves essential, which in my opinion, every job is essential. We shouldn't be nitpicking certain things. I understand certain situations or certain areas can be, more of a health risk. And I can understand things changing drastically in a very short period of time for the overall safety, but adjustments should be made and they should be made appropriately. And I think this entire process has been a bit delayed. even from when it was first mentioned. After talking to people now, something was definitely going on months ago, but I digress. So finally, kind of just having the courage to open up the clinic again. I made a decision one day, and I was like, we kind of have to open. We're kind of not going to have a clinic to come back to if we don't do something. And, thinking the way that I did in the beginning, like I previously mentioned, I felt the noble thing or the right thing to do. If you're an accountant, looking at the numbers, maybe it didn't make a good thing. It wasn't a good idea to make that decision, but at the end of the day, that's what I chose to do. And what happens is, you start to lose money, and you start to lose money faster than you thought you'd lose money. And now as a business owner, you're in a situation where you don't quite know what to do because it's new territory. And especially when you're waiting for help or support and that support doesn't show up, you do what you instinctually know to do. So I began opening up the office a couple days a week, and basically started in a smaller capacity, was regulating who was coming in, if they were healthy or, unhealthy, if they, had something going on, if they felt feverish, doing our diligence. It shouldn't take a ton of explanation for you to just say, hey, I was doing my diligence. I was making sure people weren't ill. I was making sure people weren't licking walls and then, people coming by and touching it afterwards. It's ridiculous. But you do your diligence. And because I decided to do that, I'm not in debt up to my ears now. And I also still have a clinic that I get to go back to on Monday morning. And that's an amazing feeling. And the more I have people ask me about, being open or, kind of how we've handled this storm, and I'll tell you, it's been a fucking roller coaster. It has been a roller coaster to, feeling like you're doing your part in the bigger picture, and then going to, hey, maybe we can just cruise right through this and this will be okay, to, holy shit, we're going to lose everything, to, what, I don't really care who says what. I have rights, and I'm here to help people. And at the end of the day, we're reducing, you name it. People committing suicides from chronic pain, had 2 of those last year. People being, abusive towards their family, shitty towards their kids. A lot of people rely on what you do. And for somebody to say, you can't do this or you can do that, and, leave it up to me, I'll make the best decision for you. Ain't about that. Ain't about that at all. So, that's my little rant. We are open. We've been open for, a month or so now. And we've been cautious. We've opened up slowly. We've, like I said, checked out our patients, etc. And folks that are truly concerned, stay home. Stay home. You don't need to go out and about. There's plenty of services. I'm sure you got plenty of friends and family. If you don't, hit up Craigslist, make a friend there. Whatever you got to do. If you're concerned, you should distance yourself. For the remainder of the population, those of us that feel healthy, those of us that are willing to do what is responsible to keep ourselves healthy and other people healthy that we interact with, I think you should all go about your business and continue what you're doing. So don't know who needed to hear that, but that's my 2 cents. I guess on a lighter note, Bella turned 2. So that was awesome. It is quite the interesting, the process of having a 2-year-old, the terrible 2s, the toddler age. And I tell you, she's feisty, she's witty, and she'll run you around the house till you're falling in the dirt. But having the time, I should say, to be home and around the family and around the little one and everything, really made me reflect on how much I was working. Like I had mentioned earlier, worked my ass off for 8 years, trying to make a name for myself, trying to, do something, trying to make something. And it's no easy task. So now I'm to this point where I just turned 30 last year, and I'm reevaluating and, in a sense, reconstructing, reorganizing, you could say in a wizardry fashion, getting things aligned around me in a way that I see fit and fit my lifestyle and that suit me. I've stopped seeing 4:45 and 6 o'clock patients. This is an additional kind of cutback from a cutback that probably began 3 years ago when I stopped working Saturdays, which for me was a big deal. And then I eventually was working Thursday mornings and teaching Thursday afternoons, which was insane. And then I decided to trim that back and just teach for a while. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I retired from teaching because I was burning the candle at every end and had no grip on what I was doing and what I needed to be doing. And I was still working late. And you're like, oh, 4-day work week, sounds great. Well, it was like 12-hour days. And our appointments aren't stacked back to back. They are in a sense, but there's a little buffer time. So that buffer time adds up. It adds up almost like, at least 2 hours in the day. So I'm looking at all this time. I'm getting home late. It's fucking terrible. It's terrible. And especially to have, a month off, having pool parties with the kid and the wife in the backyard, just enjoying life. Oh, you want to go on a bike ride and it's, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Great. Go for a bike ride. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So to go from that and get the joys and the experience from that, there's no way in hell you're going to go back to what you're doing before. If you do, you're going to be miserable as shit, and you're going to figure out in a very short period of time that you got to change something, or you're just going to be depressed. So the wife and I talked about it, and I decided, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. And just by making a simple change, I trimmed off 2 patients off the end of my day, and I basically took a patient through my lunch. Now that seems crazy for some people, but there's plenty of people that intermittent fast, and they understand not eating for a period of time. I can honestly say my digestion's better because I've made this change. But the other thing is my lunch usually drove my cortisol levels through the roof. I had a little over an hour, and basically I would want to drive home to see Bella and Amanda, and then I would drive back to work. So I would deal with traffic stress here, traffic stress back, eat, try to squeeze something in. Maybe Amanda would have to run to the store. Maybe Bella wasn't napping and needed attention, or, just wanted me to interact with her in some way. And all of a sudden that time just shrank and shrank and shrank, and I just became a ball of stress. And I'd run back into my afternoon, and it was just like boom, 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 just stacking things up. So after having this downtime, I was like, well, I got to make a change. Like, I can't come home at, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Like, that's just fucking insane. And as I started thinking of different things I could do and how I could compress my schedule and different ways I could work it out, I was like, I don't really like lunch. So let's try this out. And so I tried the new schedule. And like I said, when we first opened, I was only open 2 days. Second week, 2 days. Third week, 2.5 days. Fourth week, 3 days. Probably next week, we'll be open 3 days, maybe 4. And then come June, I'll be back to my 4-day work week schedule. but my days are ending at 4:30 now. So by taking a patient at lunch, trimming 2 off the end of the day, with the time in between, I trimmed 3 hours off the end of my day. So usually I would finish with my last patient at 7 o'clock. I would leave the office at 7:30. So now I'm leaving at 4:30, maybe a little bit after, depending on, what kind of needs to be handled before I leave the office. And then I'm good to go. And I will tell you, for the first couple weeks that I worked, even those short weeks, it was weird coming home and sunlight still being out and having an opportunity to get things done before I really needed to kind of, polish up the day, get everything settled, and go to sleep. And I can honestly say I'm much happier because of this. My day seems like a breeze, honestly, because I've been crushing 8 patients a day for 4 years at least, and to not have that patient load, and it's not even like it's a big difference. It's an hour. It's one less patient. But because I do it all the way through and I don't have that compounding stress in the middle of my day, which I was sacrificing. I was willing to do that. I was like, it's my family, it's my girls. I'm going to go home. I want to see them. And it would just be fucking miserable. So maybe this is something somebody needs to hear too. But if you're doing that to yourself, like, quit that shit. Like, you got to figure out a new strategy. And like I said, a lot of people are handling what we're going through right now in different ways. And for me, I've been prepared to weather the storm a little bit better. I'm not as concerned. What I'm more concerned about is my mental health and well-being. And I know there's other people that are in a similar way that don't need to be, overly concerned about paying their electric bill. But they would be way, way better off if they gave a damn about their mental health and chose to acknowledge that something has to change, and they would be much, much happier in their life. So for me, it was a big change. It was a big deal. I had a new schedule day today. Today was the third day, last day of the week, and I was off at 4:30. I had some car trouble, so I went and bought some parts for my car that had come in, and I went and picked up the little one. And we came home, and, we hung out for a while, and, she drank kombucha, and I did some work on the car, and, my afternoon was great. There wasn't an immediate, like, oh shit, it's 9 o'clock at night. You just ate, maybe it'd be a good time to take a shower, and then, hit the sheets because you got to be up again, bright and early tomorrow because you got an 8 o'clock patient. So I can honestly say I have a bit more of my sanity back, and if you are a chronic workaholic, getting to a place where you're truly in a good place and happy, it's probably going to take some time. And you may realize that there are layers to you kind of finding a settle point. I thought it was going to be, I was going to hit it when I pulled back from teaching. I was, I'm not doing all this driving. I'm not teaching anymore. I don't have that, that extra stress. This will be good. And I'll tell you, it was maybe for like a month or two. And then, that new shine, that new luster wears away, right? And you're back to the normal grind. And what I wasn't changing was every day I was just tapping myself out, just running myself through the day. I could probably see 12 patients a day if I only saw them for, 30 minutes a pop. That'd be a terrible, I wouldn't like that at all. But I could do it. But it's more of just working all day long. Literally, like, seeing the sun go up and then watching the sun go down. And you get home, and everybody that you love and want to interact with has already gone about their day, and you didn't get to participate in it. That's a shit feeling. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from this whole thing. One of my own personal experiences. There's a ton of business stuff I'd like to do, a lot of ideas. I have a therapy tool, the Hyper Roller. There's a ton of shit I'd like to do for that too. But at the end of the day, I can't do any of that if I'm fucking miserable. So I hope some people that maybe are still, taking things a little bit lightly, aren't going back, balls to the wall, trying to, get back into their same old work routine. Do an assessment, look at what you're doing, what's around you, how you're behaving, what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy. You gotta audit that stuff. You gotta take note of it. And trust me, it took the country shutting down and literally everyone I know around me shutting down so that I finally slowed down enough to think about it. It's terrible to think about it. I mean, it's terrible to think that, you can get so caught up in a workflow that you're just like a madman, just running wild. Just, the more I do, the better it'll be. It's not. It's not the way it works. You got to do it to an extent. Like I said, there's a time and a place. It's definitely a young man's game. I'm still young. I'm not saying that that's like, I'm old and I put my time in. I'm still fucking working my dick off. Okay. Like it's still hard. There's still lessons. There's still things to be learned. But if I were starting what I'm doing now, I feel like it was a good 8 years to fuck up and make mistakes and kind of, get to where I am now. If I was starting then at the age I am now, I would try to act much smarter because I'm coming in with more wisdom, more age. I would like to think the things that took me 8 years would take a wiser man half that or less than. And I don't see why not. When you're younger, you mess around and, spend a lot of time doing meaningless things, or things that don't work. And they're lessons, they are, but at the same time, if you've witnessed other people, have these lessons, sometimes those lessons can take a shorter period of time and ultimately can yield you some, a greater benefit on the back end if applied. So, yeah. Let me think here. I would like to talk a little bit about our loan situation because we did apply for the payroll loans. I won't. Well, you know what? I'll dabble in a little bit. Companies that you heard of like Shake Shack and Ruth's Chris, I believe Ritz Carlton. The way corporations work, and this was kind of a humbling thing for me to experience, was, I'm a corporation. I think I understand things, but there are always levels to it. And because these entities are usually separate entities under a mother entity, they can kind of, I'll say it's a hat trick, but it's really not a hat trick. They're just saying, hey, this is what we staff, this is what we need, et cetera, et cetera. So because they're an entity of themselves, even though they're a part of something bigger, a lot of these companies were able to get loans. And I don't know if this is factual or not, but I've heard many, many people tell me this, even my accountant. But I've been told that bankers were getting commissions from the loans that they issued, which means if, Joe needs $50,000 and Sally, who owns McDonald's, needs $50 million, they want the commission from the $50 million. It's human nature. So the first round of funding, we basically, again, like I said, going into the situation, we felt as though if we did our part, we would be taken care of in some way. That is not the system we live in, and I don't think that's a good way for anybody to really go about their existence, thinking that something's going to magically show up and support you. As I have now felt myself, that is not going to happen. So you have to try to strategize the best kind of you can. For us, like I said, kind of done a decent job of preparing for rainy days. I knew that we would lose a certain amount, but I was under the impression and hopeful that things would be reimbursed. And because things were underfunded and maybe companies got certain greedy. And I do understand that people work for these companies. I'm not bashing them for doing what they did. I just don't think you should incentivize a program for the sales associates that are communicating with the people that need the funds. I think that in of itself kind of gears the motivation to the bigger corporations. If I ask Joe, hey, you're going to make the same commission, would you like to do the company that has 350 employees, or would you like to work on the company that has 5? Joe's going to go with the company that says 5 because it's much less work for him. But because we have technology and because we're in just the modern age that we live in, 350 people can be processed pretty quick. And if you add a commission that's higher for those individuals, you've now put people in a situation where if you have fewer employees, you're less valuable to the sales associate, which I think is pretty twisted. So again, I'm not really bashing, what people did, what companies did. I'll shit talk them a little bit, but at the end of the day, they are corporations. This is the way the game is played. If you don't understand it, educate yourself. So I'm not too disappointed. I was greatly relieved when things were refunded because the cash that they had first allocated wasn't enough by any means. So we had made it through. We had done our diligence with the paperwork and things like that. So we had made it through underwriting. So when the second level of funding came through, we got it. Now that was 5 weeks after we were supposed to receive it. Now, if you think of what, salary or what payroll is for 5 weeks, that's a full month's rent. That's utilities. That's any sort of maintenance you have done. Any processors, any monthly accounts that you pay for, all of that is due in that 5 week period, plus some. So we immediately kind of end up in this place where you just got to do something. You got to do something. So I want to say it's been at least a month now, maybe, since we finally got funding. And now, as a business owner, I am continuing to go back with my accountant, my CPA, and trying to figure out the ins and outs and the fine prints of the loans that we accepted. The people who issued the loans have no idea what's going on. And people are now trying to figure out the pay periods. And the way that they wrote everything was that basically everything after you received your loan was going to be covered. So now you end up in a position where you've told people that they were going to be taken care of in some way, or helped at least. Not taken care of, I shouldn't say that. You're going to be assisted. They're going to help you float the essentials, basically. If you have a Lamborghini payment and you somehow wrote that off underneath your business and it's due, that's on you, Jack. That's got nothing to do with a roof over your head and a place for your employees to go during the day. But to tell people or give them the impression that things are going to be covered for a certain period or from a certain period, and then when the goods actually show up, it's like, change all those dates by a month, and then we'll be back on schedule again. So again, it just comes back to you can't be reliant on a system, and you can't always be willing to just comply and go with the flow. I mean, I've yet to receive an email, a memo, a text message, phone call, a carrier pigeon, telegraph, nothing from the Department of Health, nothing from any massage chair, saying anything about the type of work that we do and how they are going to differentiate between a therapeutic setting and a spa setting. There's no such guidelines. There's no guidelines. and they just want you to, go along with the flow. And I have people reach out to me daily. They're confused on, what's going on. What should I do? Well, that's your personal choice. It's not mine. Everybody feels differently about what's going on. But there's a lot about what I've experienced as a business owner and as a therapist that is very uneasy and puts me in a place where I have to be hyper proactive in getting the essentials that we need. If we need masks at the office because patients require us to wear masks, then we're going to have masks. If we need to sanitize, whatever we need, we're going to have it. We're going to take care of it. But at the same time, to bring everything to a halt and think everything's just going to be okay, isn't the way it works. Not only does it affect people's mental health, their emotional well-being, but it obviously affects the economy. I mean, you can't put all the worker bees away and say, hey, the sun will come out tomorrow. Just wait out for a little bit longer. Just hold out. It's fine. It's fine. So, I hope anybody out there that's, questioning, getting their practice going. I'm not advocating that you break any laws. I've yet to see a law that I've broken. But I do recommend that you decide to, do what's right for you and your family. This is a time where, critical thinking kind of rules. Don't just listen to people. Don't just go with the flow. Question things, look up information for yourself, look up if you feel in your gut, hey, I'm lacking in some way, I need to understand some certain guidelines better, you should be doing that. And you should be proactively taking charge of your company and the direction you want it to go in. There are people out there that need help. There's people out there that that know that we help them. And there's a lot of people out there that are suffering because we aren't helping them. So, whoever this gets to, just keep that in mind. You're not the only one out there. We're all struggling in a different way. But just speaking from experience, this is something I've never seen before, but, thinking that things are going to be in place to take care of you, don't rely on it. Don't rely on it. You really have to, carve your own way through the jungle. Whether that be your business or your personal, you should always be preparing for that rainy day because you never know what's going to happen. And you got to be able to weather the storm at least for a while. A lot of people can get beat up for, a few months, and that could take you from one end to the other. But if you barely have enough to get by month to month, something's got to change. You got to do some restructuring. You got to look at where money's going, what you're focusing on, what your priorities are. And I know for me, I built out a whole nother room, office space that I didn't really need in anticipation that I would have those people coming into my life to contribute and to build a clinic. So you just need to build kind of what your vision is, kind of what your where you're aspiring to get. Where you're aspiring to get to. All right. Take a whiskey sip break here. All right, we covered all that. So let's get into some patient stuff. There was a couple patients I had seen before we went on quarantine that were really cool. One in particular I thought was really interesting because she had a fairly simple distortion, and I'll try to explain this. I'm sure I've talked about this before. But this woman came in, so she is a nurse practitioner. She works with my wife. She's a nurse here at the local hospital. And when we talk about things, or at least when I talk about things, I talk about pain very casually. You can tell me how terrible your shoulder problem is, and I will disregard it and kind of downplay it and maybe make a joke about it. Not trying to be disrespectful, but because I know that you can be so much better than you are right now. So me and my wife have kind of cultivated a sense of humor. And we know, like, we should do certain things. We won't do certain things. We'll just kind of joke about it. So she was having an interaction with this woman at work, and the woman said something about her knee, and she had this knee pain, back pain, all this stuff. And Amanda goes, oh, well, you should try this stretch, blah, blah, blah. And she's made recommendations like this to other nurses before around the hospital. And, they'll do what she's recommending, and they'll come back because it's something I've told her, at some point, like, hey, my hip's a little tight. Oh, okay, we'll try this. Do this. Oh, my shoulder's a little tight. Okay, try this. So she kind of regurgitates that information to them. And it's hilarious because these are healthcare practitioners in our hospitals, and they come back and they're like blown away. They're like, holy cow, my knee stopped hurting, my back loosened up, et cetera, et cetera. It's funny. We should educate everyone better, but there's just so much lack of education that happens for a lot of individuals that are, LPNs, nurses, doctors, et cetera, when it comes to soft tissue and how the body is, basically very malleable. So this woman comes in. She has tried everything. She's went to massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, doing stem shock stuff, doing ultrasound stuff, all this junk. And I do an assessment. I immediately find she has a flexion disorder. For those of you that don't know, that's when one hip bone, the hip bone itself, is flexing forward, like cranking forward like a pulley. And the other one is maybe neutral, or it's actually going backwards. It's going into extension. It's going reversed to what the other side's doing. Now, when this happens, depending on which side is flexed, the sacrum will kick off to one side or the other. Okay, so like the bottom of the hip bone and your tailbone get closer. Well, what I've discovered, which this may not even be new information, but this is something that I've learned in my career, is when people are stuck in this position, sometimes even for a short period of time, the ligaments, the sacral ligaments, will begin to stiffen. And basically, this patient's session, her first one, went through, okay, what have you done? We did an assessment, flexion disorder. Okay, seeing all this stuff's going on. Start releasing all these hip flexors, starting to release some adductor muscles, releasing some stuff in her hip. In a couple areas, she said, hey, this person's worked on this before, and this person's worked on this. And that's not an uncommon response, right? Everybody always says, hey, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And yet all of those people, if maybe rolled together, could have done all of it and been successful. Or if maybe a couple of them could have just, brainstormed a little bit. They could have maybe treated some things in a little bit of a fashion and gotten things to loosen up. Well, to my surprise, whoever had worked on this woman actually did a fairly decent job through all the years and whatever she had done. That a lot of the areas that I knew were in a state of dysfunction weren't as bad as they could have been. And so I could tell, like, people had been kneading her muscles. People had been doing some work. The one thing that I found that no one had touched and actually brought her quite a bit of pain, and I believe is why not only was the flexion disorder causing some SI joint compression and pain, but because her sacrum had been kicked off to one side for such a long period of time, the ligaments on that side had hardened up. So I took my little massage star and went in there and like dug it out, and boom, loosened up. She had some referral pains and stuff like that, trigger points, very common, typically goes away. Everything softened up, and I could feel, you bounce back and forth. You go check the other side, okay, no response there, come back to the other side, okay, still a little bit tender, you treat it a little bit more, and you just feel it soften, and you just feel like that ligament gets squishy again, instead of like a hard steel rod. And immediately, woman stands up, walks around, immediately notices something's different. And I knew she noticed something's different. And as you've done this for a while, you start to read people. Because people aren't always honest, because they don't always understand what they're feeling. It's not because they want to be dishonest. It's just because they've never experienced what you've just given them. So if now all of a sudden their shoulder does something that it probably hasn't done in maybe 6 months, they're going to have kind of a bewildered, confused look on their face. They're not going to quite understand it 100%. Sometimes they won't want to say that it's necessarily better or that it's less painful. They'll just say it's different, and it's because they've been in a situation before where they told somebody, hey, it's better, and then that person never went back and did that thing again. So a lot of people are operating from that point of view. So when you're a therapist, when you're assessing people, the assessment's constantly taking place. You're constantly reading that person and kind of what they're doing, whether it's body language when you're working on them, or when it's their biomechanics, with their body mechanics, when they actually stand up and get off the chair or get off the table and start moving around again. How are they moving? Are they moving gingerly? Are they swaying back and forth? Do they have their balance? Were cranial bones out? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff. You're constantly pulling in information. So we did the whole ligament thing, softened up. Immediately, everything else that may have been reacting from the flexion disorder calmed down, because the ligament, basically my conclusion was the ligament remained hard through the entirety of everything that she's done. So all the soft tissue work, all the stuff people had been doing, working with her, it basically got that to loosen up, or got all the soft tissue to loosen up, but it wasn't nobody went to go treat the ligaments, because nobody goes, oh, the ligaments are hard, we should treat the ligaments. They just go, oh, the ligament's a ligament, and it is what it is, and whatever position it's in and whatever it's doing is that, and it's constant. That's not the case. This was just hey, I'm going to go through what I know to look for. This wasn't I know the ligament's messed up or the ligament's stiff. This was just me going through the steps of it all. But that's because I've had patients where I put them in a lift and they had worse pain because it looked like they had a short leg. And then realizing down the road, when I did a more thorough treatment and I had actually gotten the ligaments and things like that to soften, their pelvis had a functional imbalance that eventually settled. And now all of a sudden, hey, they're fine without a lift. And I was actually causing more of a problem putting them in that lift in the first place. So just kind of a really kind of neat, new patient. I love when I get healthcare practitioners in, because it blows their mind. There's like, what the hell did you just do? Like, they just know something's different. And that's awesome. You get that reaction from most people anyway, being a neurosomatic therapist. But, to see somebody else that does healthcare that may be doing things that, I don't want to say that you would feel are more significant, just because you can, give somebody an IV or cut something open, doesn't mean you're more or less valued in comparison to another healthcare practitioner. But they're just geared different. If I had a question about medications, I go ask my wife, hey, what's this medication? What are known side effects? Maybe what are some complications that people have? How do they have to change the dosage? How do they have to do this or that? Like that's all information they know. But if you start asking, information about, hey, how's your body move? And what's this muscle do? And, how do you look at this? And, what does it mean if this is happening? They got no idea. We're all trained in our own little scope. So when you get other healthcare practitioners in, try to bond with that person in some way. Try to, even if it's just sharing the love of healthcare, getting in, you both got into this for a reason. You have something in common. And especially if you help them, it just opens their eyes to this whole other world of like, wow, what else is the body doing that I'm not fully understanding? And that makes them a better practitioner, because then whether or not they start looking at, NST or soft tissue work or anything like that, they just maybe start looking at other stuff and, become intrigued in some way. That's great, because we're all kind of keeping each other's fire stoked and keeping each other motivated. So, that was just a neat one. Talking ligaments, sacral ligaments. Who would have thought? Especially with everything else, already being fairly loosey-goosey. What else? I had a note on here. I had a patient that I was doing some kidney work on, and I initially thought it was helping her shoulder tilt. It was creating a trigger point referral into her shoulder, which we now have MRIs on, and we know her AC joint's slightly, I guess we'll just say deformed. There's a slight anatomical variation in it. The cartilage is a little bit thinner, but we just had a weird day where I was working on her kidneys, in particular her right kidney, which sets a little bit lower because of her liver on that side. But it was going straight to her shoulder. And I could have sworn after the treatment, her shoulders changed. And she's that type of case where something will happen one treatment, and you better damn well check it next time, because it may be completely gone, or completely changed, or constant. It just it chooses what it wants to be at any given point. And this was one of those situations that, although she had some trigger point referrals into the shoulder from her kidney on that side, ultimately, it reduced a little bit of feedback into her obliques. I was able to get the obliques to calm down a little bit more in the QL in the back. But overall, it was just kind of, I don't know. It seemed like an immediate change. But when she'd come back in, she was back to that same distortion. We had checked the kidney again. Not nearly the same reaction as far as like a release or, things changing or improving. And then did a little bit to her shoulders, and then that was kind of it. But when she came back in, a lot of it refacilitated. The trigger point didn't, but the shoulder tilt did. And knowing what we know now, she has a little more activity in her supraspinatus on both sides, and she has a certain amount of deltoid bursitis as well, which oddly you could feel, because her deltoid actually felt calloused when I first started treating her. So we've taken a little different course of action. We've begun working solely on depressors of the shoulder, things that are potentially reacting and pulling down, whether it's specifically the deltoid or the supraspinatus, but also some of the other contributors like biceps and stuff like that. We got some big dogs that she's kind of tending to, so that's still a work in progress. And yeah, some patients, they're just they're tough cases. They just I don't know, some people are just diligent, like super diligent, and it's good to see. It's good to see that people are willing to commit to, hey, this may be my today, but it's not going to be my tomorrow, or at least eventually it won't be my tomorrow. I'm at least going to make, strided effort in a certain direction to try to improve myself or improve my overall well-being. And if I fail, then damn it, at least I tried. So that's always cool. That's always cool. There's a couple patients I've been doing some oral treatments to, specifically individuals that grind and clench, just to kind of start things off, and especially if they have cranial trauma and they've, tell me of some maybe previous head traumas or maybe sporting accidents, things like that. But I've just been doing a lot of cheek work. So not even getting into like the, big deep muscles, like masseter and pterygoids and stuff like that. Just working cheeks. And I'll tell you what, whether it be people clenching, grinding, chewing the inside of their mouth, even kids. I worked on my my niece the other night, and she had run into, well, she said a wall, but I think she like fell into a table, and she had a little kind of a bruise on her cheek. And I gave her a popsicle, kind of conned her into it. And I was like, hey, let me check out your cheek. So I worked on the inside of her cheek a little bit, and her cheek felt like trash. It felt terrible. And it's the same kind of feeling that I felt in many other patients. And some patients will even describe it like it burns. And I've realized it's anything where people are like sucking. So obviously my niece, sucking her thumb. And then from the trauma of, kind of falling and hitting her cheek or whatever, that was kind of the big issue on her right side. But a lot of people I've noticed, like smokers, or people, like I mentioned, like a nervous habit, chewing on the inside of your cheek. I'm guilty of that sometimes. Clenching, grinding. I have patients that, know they should wear a night guard and they don't. Some of them believe that, it kind of entices them to chew more or to grind more. And I've had some that after we do a simple, kind of cheek treatment, they actually feel like they don't have the tendency to want to clench and grind. But part of that is, just nervous tension left in their system, and they're going to bed with it. So, again, we could maybe state, much like I've kind of went through my own transformation during this time, many of us that are maybe going to bed with a lot of tension, maybe need to make some adjustments, or have a talk, or, make whatever change or, due diligence progress that we need to do. And we'd probably notice that some of that tension ease up. Or maybe it's just as simple as, taking a moment to chill out, meditate, do your thing, just kind of, chill out for a moment and just let your body rid itself of all of that before you literally take it to bed and then sleep with it all night. So yeah, the cheek stuff's really cool. Fairly simple treatment. You just glove up and you more or less just kind of, like you were rolling, like clay in your, between your thumb and your index finger. You just kind of roll it, we call it cross fibering. If you understand fiber direction and what muscles you're kind of working on. If not, just do it like a caveman. Cross fiber it. So if you feel a certain muscle and it's one direction, just strum across it like a guitar string. And I'll tell you, I've helped myself with headaches. I've had patients come in, their head's all jacked up, all their cranial bones are misaligned. Boom, do a cheek treatment on them, and I'll tell you what, immediately all the cranial bones start calming down. And what's interesting is it actually begins to remove tone off the posterior side of the neck as well. You'll actually feel that individual's neck loosen up. Usually, whoever you're treating will notice that their neck kind of eases up a little bit, and they may feel almost like a head rush or a sense of dizziness when they sit up, because you are relieving pressure on the cranial bones. Your body has to regain kind of its sense of proprioception and feedback of, kind of where you are in space. Once that change has been made, your body kind of has to recalibrate. So yeah, that's been something I've been doing with a lot of people. I worked on a newborn about a week and a half ago now. And that was one thing that I wanted to do, but I was actually pretty satisfied with the way the treatment went, because I was able to get enough to loosen up just from working on her neck. I've discovered, kind of segueing, new conversation, discovered working with infants. Initially, I thought if you had a C-section or forceps, type birth, or your child did, that you were 100%, or 90%, whatever, gonna have some sort of distortion in your child's neck or in their cranial bones. Now, having my own child, my own little guinea pig, we had a natural birth at home, with no drugs, in a tub, and that little girl had some issues when she came out. So I worked on her neck immediately, got her atlas back in proper alignment. What I found is if I can loosen things up and get the atlas back into place, majority of the time, the cranium will follow. If it doesn't, that means attachments in or around the cranium are causing those distortions to refacilitate, which is where the cheek work can really come into handy. Just doing like the first layer. There's obviously other layers to it, but that in itself, I found, can really provide a lot of relief. So, little Nora, I was working on, she was too small. I have big club-like caveman hands, and to try to do cheek on an infant that small, it's just too much. She was only 2 weeks old. You need to understand, as a therapist, when to kind of pump your brakes. When, like, you don't have to do something just that day because it came to you, or you're like, oh, this would be a good idea. Certain things can wait. So I made the judgment call with Nora, and I was like, hey, I'm going to work on her neck. I'm going to opt to not do any cheek work or anything like that to try to take pressure off her cranium. She was a C-section, and I can't recall if mom said that she was a forceps or vacuum baby or anything like that. But regardless, any birth is not an easy birth. So checking children after they're born, If you know someone that's having a child and they're comfortable with you touching that child, I would highly recommend donating your services and just going over and do it, because from what I've seen, it can drastically change how that child develops, how they think and perceive the world around them, how they later on will do in school, cognitively. I mean, amazing things I've seen unfold doing good cranial work for kids. So sooner the better. But little Nora, I was able to work on her for, maybe 10 minutes or so. Got her neck to start loosening up and worked on her belly a little bit, kind of got her organs just to soften a bit. Basically, she was having minor kind of colicky type symptoms, which are easily remedied if you can do some good visceral massage and if you can work on the base of the neck. If you can get their C1 back into place, you'll alleviate that pressure on the C1 or on the vagus nerve, and that in itself will calm down the gut, and should also kind of help with breathing and heart rate, and almost kind of mellow that individual or the infant, just kind of putting them into more of a sedated kind of state. She definitely mellowed out, but after working on the belly, she was hungry. So she went and fed, and I swear that kid probably ate for a good 30 minutes. It seemed like it took forever. But she came out, and the little baby was completely passed out. Worked on her some more, and after, I want to say, I don't know, maybe another 10 minutes or so, her neck was super loose. There was a lot of room. I could feel her atlas in ways that I couldn't feel her atlas before. When I first started, it just kind of felt like a bunch of kind of mushy tissue. Things are just kind of like jammed up. And that's kind of how I'll try to describe that to people too. When you feel, tissue that's dysfunctional, it just feels like a messy room. Like, it doesn't feel good. If you say knew a bone well enough that if you were blind, you'd be like, oh, I'm on that part. And you can just kind of blindly feel the contours of the bone and where you're at and have a good kind of understanding. You kind of lose all of that when soft tissue is tight. So the first go around working on her was just kind of like opening it up. And then the second go around, I could actually feel her little baby atlas, and I could feel her little baby levator scapula going down to her right shoulder. So I worked on the top of her right shoulder a little bit more, and then I rubbed her little baby bicep because I knew her whole little body was in full flexion, and just got that tension off her shoulder, and immediately, boom, her neck let go. That little bit of pressure came off, and I knew she was going to sleep, but geez, I think her father texted me and said she was sleeping for like 4 or 5 hours, something like that. It was like, I want to say it was like almost 5 hours later, and I think she was still out. And who knows what pressure that took off her body, what pressure that took off her nervous system, what benefits or what things in her growth cycle are going to come easier now because of that small correction. And I mean, like I'd mentioned, my daughter, I had worked on her within the first 5 minutes she was born. I think that it made a huge difference in some of the minor complications that we had in the beginning. She was a little tachypnic and had low blood oxygen levels, so her lungs were a little wet. But after doing some skin to skin and after some of the stuff that I had done to her neck, boom, all that mucus came up. Her lungs cleared up, her blood oxygen levels shot through the roof, and she was good as gold. And I have worked on her a couple times since then. She's fallen and maybe landed a certain way, and I've worked on her leg or on her arm, and it hurts. There's, when you cause trauma to an area, that area goes to guard itself. And when it's in a guarded state, it's going to be tender. And there's ways you can try to manipulate around that but a lot of times you just have to kind of get in there and make it happen. And as sucky as that is, to put your child through something where it's uncomfortable, it's painful, there's something I've learned is from working on myself and just being a therapist is like, you just have to go through the shit sometimes. And I think if like that's a good lesson in itself for your kids. Like, sometimes it's going to suck, but what's on the other side is a lot better. And a lot of my patients, I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with. They love me when they come in, they love me when they go out, and they hate me every time in between. And that's because I'm doing things that are uncomfortable, that push them out of their comfort zone, but ultimately it's benefiting them at the end of the day, and they recognize that, and that's why they keep coming back. So there have been those moments where I've had to work on Bella, and it's very uncomfortable, and it sucks seeing your child in pain. But what's amazing on the back end is the little look in their eyes when they look at you like you literally like just created a miracle. You made whatever was going on go away. And I've had that happen a couple times, and now my daughter Bella is very eager to get work done. When I was working on her niece, she was the entire time in the background going, my turn, my turn, my turn. So I believe it's of huge benefit if you get them going early, much like if you would want, your child to play an instrument or play a sport. Get them started early. Get them started early in soft tissue work. Expose them to taking care of this vessel that carries you around. And I think it just pays back tenfold. I mean, I think we'll see a different generation. We'll see different people living in the future than we see right now, because they're actually being told and information's being passed on that, you need to take care of this thing. Whereas before, we've thought we could use and abuse it and run at 100 mile an hour and not have any blowouts, not have any issues. And we know that that's not the case. So why not prepare our children to better understand, what they're working with and ways that they can, kind of better support it, keep it healthy. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here for now. It's getting late. I don't want to wake up the little one. I will try to get this out this weekend, and hope you guys enjoyed some of my rants and some of my struggles, and knowing that you're not the only one in it. We're all in it. If you got any questions, hit me up. Till we meet again, take care.